Good morning, everybody. It's another beautiful day. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. Much am I late by? 11 minutes. Sorry about that. I was busy getting cheese and stuff. Let me just pop out the chat. Whoa, there's already a few of you here. Hello, hello. You're wondering if I'm awake, whether I've been eaten by ooze. No, I'm here. Don't worry. Hey, check this out. I got a new mead drinking vessel. It's a bit frosty. It's been sitting in my fridge. Suitable for mead. And we're back on the good stuff. The Catoblepis death cheese. This is some truly vicious cheese. You sacrificed your Vector hoodie. Yay! No. What's up? Cheese for the cheese god, curds for the curd throne. An echo? Is there an echo? Yeah. Wrestling. The new cases, well, there's two individuals who are Kiwis who arrived from England via Australia. And they stayed in the Nova Hotel in a quarantine facility, basically, which is a hotel, managed by hotel staff and stuff. And there was testing available to them, but they said it was voluntary for some unknown reason. And these two individuals, one of them was actually showing symptoms of COVID-19, but said it was related to some other health issue. And they needed to get to Wellington, our capital city, from Auckland, which is a drive all the way across the North Island, because they've got a sick relative, a parent who died, right? So they need to go to the funeral and stuff like that and look after the family. And so they'd only been in quarantine for less than a week, I think, and then they just took off and drove all the way across the country with COVID-19. So, yeah, when they got there, they got tested and came back with a positive result because, the symptoms became, at that point they became concerned with their symptoms. So there's a mixed sort of attitude in New Zealand, with 5 million of us going, that's really stupid what they did, and really, really just craps all over all the people who made sacrifices and lockdown and stuff all this time to come into the country and do that. Just is ridiculous. A lot of people said, well, there was no malice on their part. It wasn't like a premeditated thing. Yeah, maybe this hotel staff is at fault. Maybe the government's at fault. Whatever. But the end result is all compassionate leave now has been cancelled, so nobody's getting out of quarantine early. And there's mandatory testing for everyone, which is good, which I think should have been in place in the first place. Yeah, and we had another couple who went to a funeral and then ran off, like they were escaping custody. It's like, we're doing this for your own good too, People need to get it through their thick skulls that when you come down with COVID-19, if you are symptomatic and you come down with COVID-19, there's a strong possibility that you won't be able to look after yourself because you are absolutely devastated with weakness, because your blood basically is poisoning your entire body and your lungs pack up. So it's in your best interest to have the authorities close at hand to look after you and put you on a ventilator or whatever you need at that time, because nobody who has been in medical supervision who wasn't, an octogenarian or whatever, has died in New Zealand from it so far. So it's in people's best interest that they actually stay within the reach of authority and keep the authority aware of what's going on with them. Don't try and dodge it like it's some sort of prison sentence. No, this is stainless. This is not pewter. Got it for $3 from a hospice shop, which is like a second hand that goes towards charity. Spies. Well, I'm just saying, when the Kiwis initially found out about this, it's lucky that we don't burn people at the stake in New Zealand. But I don't think they're dealing with having a virus and a family member dead, so they're already being punished enough, really. Oh yeah, the background. I've got new shelving, by the way. This plastic type shelving, which was not as easy to put up as you would think. But yeah, turns out that adjustable shelving is not actually adjustable. It's much easier to put it up where it... You guys in New Zealand are making way too much of this COVID-19, DeWall. Hey, DeWall, are you aware that people who have had COVID-19 and 40 days later are still manifesting symptoms and have their life impacted by it? That you don't just get over this and go back to life as normal? That they have support groups who the overwhelming consensus is that the COVID-19 is one weird disease? Yeah. Do not agree with you. Do you spice? Why not just have your family take care of you if you get it? Because not everybody's a medical professional. Some people are actually morons. Yeah, getting the swab in your nose is not fun, Ian, I know. And all of the people at the Nova Hotel have to get swabbed and tested now. All of them, all the staff, all the people at the airport who dealt with these two have to get swabbed as well. So they're getting swabbed like crazy. They have chosen poorly, yeah. But anyway, let's move on from that and get back to D&D, please. I just wanted to give a shout out on this live stream to Nick Petro, who is a Australian author, and he switched me on to the Oracle of Aegis Isle. Aegis? The Oracle of Aegis Isle. I linked it in the community chat, I think. Yeah, I did. It's a good place a good adventure that I wanted to have a look at. Where did I put the thing? Oh, here it is. Here it is here. Oracle of Aegis Isle. It's for 2nd to 4th level characters. It's a good sort of mystery whodunit type adventure on an interesting setting, because he's put tons of stuff in here, and I really like his writing style, in that it's not like cluttered up with stuff, and things are really well laid out. He's put in the hours to actually make this really good for a DM. So he's got an overview and a synopsis of the adventure. It goes through step by step and tells you all the things going on. There's lots of random roll tables and things to help out. Lots of interesting NPCs. It's not a huge thing. It's only, what is it? Blah. I think it's about 40 pages or so. Lovely maps. Battle maps that you can use VTT. Map of the island. And you could just plonk this, like you could have plonked this in Faerun if you wanted to, or just use it in your homebrew world. It's perfectly workable. And basically there's this festival going on in the island. There's sort of a mysterious plot going on with the leadership. And there's all these events, like sporting events and questing events, that go on in the adventure that you can involve your player characters in. So there's the conspiracy, part 4. So there's gambling, frog licking, talent show, drinking competitions, tug of war, archery, elemental archery, tightrope, post jumping. There's a channel swim, flaming foot race, pillar boxing. There's capturing an animal, an exotic feline predator with blue fur, capable of teleporting. All sorts, all these competitions. And yeah, it's really good. I plan on running that at some point. So it's quite cheap. Go and check it out on the DM's Guild. So yeah, just a shout out to Nick, and thanks for hooking onto that. And that ties in really nicely with the wereshark video, which is coming out very soon. Should be tomorrow, I think, that I'll be uploading that. Color-coded dividers, yeah, I'm old school. I've actually got a few things in here. This is like my little DMs binder. I have a few of these. Next tab is supplement for 5th edition, set in the universe of ships that fly between the worlds and of battles in the air and in space. So it's like a 5th edition alternate Spelljammer. It's more like Space 1999. Then I've got a section for all the different types of dragons and where to find them. So that's my research guide, so I can find all the references and stuff when I'm making dragon videos. That's nice, Kimmel. Every time you join one of these streams, get excited about D&D and go off and start working on your campaign. Yeah. So, Aquatic Adventures. I need a list of genres that could be used for RPGs for a friend. I have a fantasy, sci-fi, western, pirate, and superhero. If you or the chat has stuff to add, that would be nice. Well, horror. You missed out on horror in there, which sort of crosses the boundaries between all of those. I mean, all of those things can be blended and mixed together. Fantasy and sci-fi is just, you know, a different world in different sort of time periods. Whether you're adding magic to your supers or not, it could also be a fantasy. Frog licking, yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely hallucinogenic frogs. 60 pounds lighter with no muscle mass and constantly tired. It's no joke. Yeah, it's no joke. Yeah. Yeah, the wereshark video was surprisingly fun to do. And I thank everybody who gives me suggestions to do videos, because you push my boundaries and expand me into areas that I were ignorant of. You know, it's that same old thing where you don't know enough about something, so you're ignorant of it. Same with mongrel folk. I'm doing the research on the mongrel folk, and I'm like, actually, these are very interesting. They're a tragic sort of hero category of humanoid. That you could really highlight a lot of issues in a D&D world and have a campaign where you're anti-oppressor and anti the Church of Bane and all that sort of stuff. I've been really enthusiastic lately after getting to the bit about all the different gods and stuff, because they have a very cleric-centric description of all the faiths of the Forgotten Realms in the Elminster's Forgotten Realms guide, which I highly recommend you get if you're playing in the Forgotten Realms. So I'm finally enthusiastic about making cleric videos, so I'm going to be doing the cleric character class videos pretty soon. I'm surprised that DMs can keep things moving so smoothly with all the ad-libbing that they do. Well, the ad-libbing is really a lot easier than going off a module, would you believe? As long as you keep good notes of what you've included in the game, you can. I ad-lib 90% of my adventures. It's very hard for me to actually stick to a campaign. Can Asmodeus have clerics? Yeah, absolutely. Would you like me to read you out a bit about Asmodeus and the Church of Asmodeus? Because I can. I think he's in here. Possibly. Maybe not. No, he's not in here. But I can find info on Asmodeus. The Church of Baal is Church of Bane is really interesting. And also Azuth, because I thought Azuth died, but I guess Azuth is back. I really like Azuth as a god in Forgotten Realms, so I would resurrect him if it was my campaign. All hail Hypnotoad. Tritons, yeah. So the Sea of Fallen Stars in Forgotten Realms is really interesting because it's called Seros by the populations that live there, and it's packed with civilizations that have had 12 major wars So there's a chance that you could be running a sea campaign where you're taking spices from Termish to the borders of, the port docks of Cormier, and you get involved, and you're just sailing past you've skirted around the pirate isle, staying close to the coast, and all of a sudden you get involved in an undersea skirmish who regard your sailing vessel as an objective. Like, it's full on. Next thing you know, your ship's been destroyed. You've been captured by the enemy, who are holding you hostage for some reason. Then you get rescued by merfolk and tritons, who compensate you by building you a magical ship that can fly above the water. How often am I called out for contradicting myself to players? Not as often as I should be, I think is the polite term. I probably do it more often than I know. Yeah. But it doesn't matter how long you've been DMing. It's always a learning experience. It's always a journey of self growth as a storyteller. So I would never assume that I'm a good DM. I'm always working at it. Always come from the standpoint that you need to improve and look for ways to improve, I think is the way to go. Was the Sea of Fallen Stars mentioned in your Dragon video? Passing, yeah. Like, there's plenty of secrets about the Sea of Fallen Stars for sure. It's an unexplored country. Most of the people who live around the border countries of the Sea of Fallen Stars have only been plying the waves there for the last 10,000 years or so. The sea trade started from Mulharind and Unther, so the shipping vessels of those early nations sort of started off. So they've got old maritime navies and stuff like that, and sort of like a Hollandish feel of trading nations and things. Like places like the Vilhon Reach, for instance, wasn't there a certain time ago because it was actually the result of a mage disaster type attack that wiped out a bunch of cities called the Sword Cities. So the Deep Wash and the Vilhon Reach are actually the result of a magic catastrophe, a huge spell that wiped out a civilization. So that changed the entire shoreline of the Sea of Fallen Stars, of course, because all of that water washed into there. So there's been lots of changes, and yeah. There's a token character that had a flying boat. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah, rescued by Faye. Yeah. Designing an alien weapon for Dark Elves in the campaign. I'm at odds with a fellow DM. I am doing a collaborative campaign. Should I value the practicality of the weapon or the design? I don't know what the specifics are there, Billy. I'm loath to step in between you and another DM. I mean, that's your friend, right? So I'm not a relationship counselor. Thanks to Wall. By the way, everybody, it's a monetized super chat enabled stream. Sponsored by Cheese. Still waiting for someone to do a Were-Dragon video, or maybe I missed it somewhere. You did! I've actually done the Were-Dragon. It's the Song Dragon. The Song Dragon is the Were-Dragon. There's also a Drow version of a Were-Dragon as well. So there's kind of two. The Drow Dragon and the Song Dragon are basically Were-Dragons, because the Song Dragon operates as a humanoid that turns into a dragon, not the other way around. Am I going to play Baldur's Gate 3? Yes. What do you think is the best prestige class for a wereshark character? Wavekeeper, Stormwrack, Dread Pirate, Song of Silence, or Anime Lord? I'm thinking Dread Pirate. Dread Pirate for sure. Oh no, Ag the Silver Radio. When a person's soul goes to the afterlife, it passes through astral conduits, specifically for souls. It doesn't go through the normal channels. Angels can also use those conduits, which are much faster and direct than anything else in the astral sea. So it goes through the ethereal, through the deep ethereal to the fugue plane, which is kind of the border between the ethereal plane and the astral plane, and then it goes from the fugue plane through conduits directly through the astral plane to the outer planes. So it almost doesn't go through the astral at all, because there can be no chance that a astral dreadnought will eat them. that's pretty much the reason why. So there's no chance that you're going to catch a soul going through the astral realm. No way. Spacey chair. Is it comfy? This one? Yeah. I like this chair. It reclines. I actually adjusted this. I actually fixed this chair myself with a bit of carpentry. Good for another 40,000 asses. Yeah, mages and their shenanigans, for sure. Blew up destroyed a civilization. Are song dragons bards? No, they're just called song dragons. They mostly live in like Waterdeep and various other places. There's a lot of metallic dragons, silvers in particular, that live in humanoid populations. Thank you. Toss a coin to the Witcher. Toss a coin to the greed dragon. Up there on the shelf. Just almost out of shot. There's his wing. Thanks, Gad. Looking forward to the 5-wee Icewind Dale book. Oh, yes, very much so. I was just kind of having an extensive conversation with this, with folks about this on the Discord server, where if you go back and you look at the conversation that I was having, I actually revealed a lot of information about the Icewind Dale video game, which is coming out soon, the Dark Alliance game. So it's not a Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance game, they're doing a separate Baldur's Gate game, and I kind of get the impression that these two companies, Took and this other company, were kind of competing for a Dark Alliance type game, but I don't know, because the Baldur's Gate was the franchise seat for Dark Alliance, but I think the other company that was making the Dark Alliance game kind of went way into like quite different. And Took Games made a game that is Dark Alliance. So it's a beat 'em up co-op game with lots of combat and stuff, and it's set in the Forgotten Realms in 1368, I think, or something like that, around the time when the Crystal Shard book was set, and it's the companions of the Hall doing the whole Crystal Shard Invasion of 10 Towns storyline. So you get to fight Icing Death, you get to fight Big Grin, you get to fight all these big frost giants and stuff like that, and the visuals and stuff for it is stunning. Don't pay any attention to the somewhat disastrous GoPro-esque heavy metal song trailer. That's not what the game looks like. The game is actually the last little bit of that trailer where they're standing there and watching Icing Death go flying over. That's what the game actually looks like. I've seen sneak previews of it and stuff when I worked on it. So it's actually really, really good. And that Dark Alliance game is going to be great. I'm actually looking forward to playing that more than I am playing the Baldur's Gate one, because it's a game where you can sort of jump in, hack and slash and stuff. And plus I get the added bonus of seeing if they included any of the lore that I wrote for it. So that'll be fun. That's a lot of... yeah, true. Hey, William Jackson. I am doing well, thank you. Straight after this live stream, I'm going over to Tauranga, which is the nearest sort of major town on the Bay of Plenty here, because we're fixing up my dad's electric car. It's a first generation Prius, but he loves the thing. He'll never get rid of it. Fixed this chair myself with carpentry. It's true. It's got a bit of plywood stuck on the side. Because it's a long story. I don't want to get into crafting. Thank you, Michael Jacobson. Hey, AJ. So I'm making an underwater campaign. Any hints or tips on things I should pay special attention to? Don't pay too much attention to like depth pressure and things like that, because that's pretty boring fantasy stuff. Um, Basically assume that if the characters have got some means of breathing underwater, that it deals with, compression and all that sort of stuff. And make them commonly available so that death by drowning is only a rare occurrence in an underwater campaign, because you want to have it so that you're basically in an environment where you can swim fly, and don't worry too much about cold and hypothermia and stuff like that as well. Unless you're in really, really abyssal zones, so you're going so far down underwater that there's no light. So when you're in perpetual darkness, that sort of thing. Pay attention to aquatic races, get a basic familiarity with them, and have a grab bag glossary of like a random encounter table of deep sea creatures which are a threat, like giant groper, or giant clams, swarms of squid, giant octopus, moray eels, that sort of thing. There's a lot of poisonous things underwater as well, so toxins from sponge spores and things like that. So instead of fungus in underdark caves, you would have spores and anemones and things like that in underground caves, because the underdark is just as prevalent in the undersea regions of fantasy world as it is on the land. So you can have dungeons and things like that are built by these creatures. It makes sense that creatures that live in coral reefs and things like that would want to protect their civilization by burrowing into reefs and stuff. So it's quite likely that merfolk and things would have burrows and extensive dungeon areas just as much as surface folk, if not even more. Because anything on the surface can be wiped out by giant kraken tentacles that would come in and just eat all the people. So that sort of thing. It's a lot older. Civilizations underwater are much, much older than surface civilizations, particularly in the Forgotten Realms, because before the Age of Thunder, for an unknown period of time, it was known as the Blue Age, where aboleth and stuff ruled the world under ice caps and stuff, and the sea was completely frozen over. So everything was aquatic, and they experimented on a lot of different species and things like that. So who knows what ancient temples and things there are in deep abyssal regions. Go and watch Aquaman, for instance, to give you some idea of what that like abyssal civilization of horribly monstrous creatures that have adapted to the dark depths would be like. Have like crab people and stuff like that. So invent species that the players have never heard of. There's aquatic versions of turtles, for instance. There's that aquatic race of octopi people that I mentioned. There will be people who live in sort of like little island enclaves around seamounts. So mountains under the sea are where most of the life operates, because they have to be close to the surface to get sunlight and stuff like that. But otherwise, in underground volcanic regions and things like that, you have hot springs and stuff which have unique life and life forms and civilizations that live around there, like shrimp people this big that are the version of underwater fairies, for instance. You can be very, very creative. Thanks, Zach. AJ, first off, thanks for all your videos. Second, what are your favourite standard dragons and exotic dragons? Ooh, my favourite standard dragon would be the silver dragon and brass and copper. So I like the metallic dragons. My favourite evil dragons would be reds and black dragons, because black dragons are just thoroughly evil. And I had a campaign where a hatchling basically took over an entire city very quickly because they're born smart and manipulative, and know spells and things, and they were very quickly able to outsmart the adventurers who decided that they weren't going to kill the hatchling, they were going to raise it, because it manipulated them by their greed straight away. My favourite exotic dragons would have to be, well, I think the song dragons probably count. Probably fairy dragons, I think. Fairy dragons and pseudo dragons get a lot of play in my games because they're part of the ecosystem, and fairy dragons are very curious, and I just like role-playing a fairy dragon because they're so ridiculous. Hey DDM, I'm doing well, thank you. The fungus among us. Spell scales, yeah. I think spell scales are They may be Bahamut spawn. So they're in the sort of biological Cold War between Bahamut and Tiamat. There are lots of different species. Spell scales are an alternate sort of dragonborn species that are more humanoid, and they make great bards and sorcerers. And they're very snappy dresses. To the average person, they would see spell scales as just another form of like lizard folk or dragonborn sort of hybrid type thing. Some people who have only encountered spell scales might think that they're actually dragonborn, but spell scales have been around on Faerun a lot longer than the dragonborn have. And the big question, of course, is what's going on with the dragonborn, since the country that are next to Chicenta, where they sort of crash landed when the two worlds merged, has gone back to Aber again and left their population stranded. So they're an empire without a home now. Yeah, there's crab people in crustacean people in Chult, the adventure in Chult as well. Tomb of Annihilation. Was there an aquatic purple worm? The aquatic purple worm is actually just a regular purple worm. They can exist quite well in the water, and they become the mottled worm. So they go from a purple to a sort of a mottled colour when they live underwater. But otherwise, they're exactly the same as a purple worm. I learned that from my stuff. God, it's true. I'm pouring so much information in my head, I've become an encyclopedia of D&D. Snorks and shrimp people. Why not? Mr. Crab. Starfish people. Why not? Oh yeah, the Blue Dragon Mathia. And also, one of my campaigns in Sigil, for instance, it's now canonical whenever I run my games that the fairies are actually the mafiosos of Sigil. They run like booking operations and stuff like that. Bookies. Robert Wilson, are weresharks connected with the Sahuagin god? Secular, yes and no. There's multiple different ways that weresharks can originate. Nobody knows what the origin of weresharks are, because when the gods... well, you'll find out in the video when I talk about the most famous wereshark in Forgotten Realms history. So they've been around for a very long time, since at least the Age of Thunder. And the origin is unknown. However, Telos and Umberlee can create new weresharks. So they can actually create and give it as like a blessing to their most vicious and nasty followers who ask for it and deserve it and have the personality for it. And of course it spreads whenever somebody gets bitten by a hybrid or full wereshark. Yeah, so we don't know. But yeah, there's a couple of big sort of evil shark deity type figures, Secular being one of them for sure. And that wereshark actually swam with Secular for a time, but he didn't get it from Secular in the first place. He already was a wereshark when the gods first encountered him. Interestingly enough, he's human. So humans were around in the Age of Thunder for a very long time ago, and he had like heavy tattooing and stuff. So we don't know where he came from. Yeah, Aboliths are super smart. Hey Azel, I'm good. What's my favourite underwater monster? I don't know. It's a toss-up between like the different amphibian races and the Sahuagin. The Sahuagin are good, nasty creatures that you just have no compunctions about killing. The Kotoa are interesting because they can just... You never know what you're going to encounter with those things. They're so crazy. Yeah. And the Locath are interesting because they're kind of like a tragic race as well. Hey, thanks, Bale Rider. Has there been any mention of Lupin in Forgotten Realms? Well, there is a species in the Shah which kind of fits the bill. They're not necessarily Lupin though. But there are non-lycanthropic dog-like people in the Forgotten Realms for sure. Krakens? Krakens are okay. Gargantuan isopods, yeah. What's next for the Undead Remaster series? I don't know. Shall we go... do we want a corporeal or an incorporeal undead? I leave it to you. I learned that from my stuff. Yeah, put it on a t-shirt. I know this from my learnings. Oh, giant monster. Well, I am a Godzilla fan. Let's see. Giant jellyfish, for sure. Particularly giant air jellyfish that float through the air and snatch people off the ground. I like that idea. Have I ever heard of the Tojanita? No, I have not. I'll have to look that up. It's on my list. Good opportunity for some Lovecraftian beasties. Absolutely, yeah. Well, like I say, when I mentioned things underwater may have been there for a very long time, since before the Age of Thunder, when the aboleths ruled the surface world. Yeah, I'm talking about Lovecraftian stuff. Elder evils. Yeah, Sahuagin can talk with sharks, and they are familiar with sharks. They actually revere weresharks. And since weresharks are extremely arrogant, they like that. So they like a species, an entire species, which will basically kowtow to them because they see them as blessed. So weresharks are less inclined to savage Sahuagin indiscriminately. If it could be said that they have allies. Ghouls! Ghouls is a good choice. Do I have tips for DMing shipwreck survival? Not really. I mean, it basically comes down to, as a DM, you want to shipwreck them in a place where they are supposed to be stranded. So it's not something that you want to happen randomly out in the middle of the ocean for no reason, because they're going to die. And that's the end of the adventure, and boring. So what you want is they get shipwrecked, and there's some lifeline back to the adventure, back to the story that advances the story. Every event in your campaign should advance the story, not curtail it. So shipwrecks are really just, okay, we need to transition from you having a base ship that you can go back to and defend and stuff to, to now you're not on the ship anymore and you need to deal with that. So it might be that you've arrived at your destination, or you need to find some alternate means to get to your destination, or you need some way to rescue your ship. Say you've got cargo and stuff like that on there, which is not going to be destroyed by sinking under the waves. Or perhaps the ship gets netted and dragged down to the bottom of the sea, but it's still okay. There's an opportunity to possibly rescue it. But you need to make an alliance with a species which you didn't want to deal with. Something like that. Hey, thanks, Zach. What could bring the dragons and giants on Faerun together as friends? A larger threat to both of their civilizations, I think. So something like somebody waking up Tharizdun, for instance, would get the giants and the dragons to work together. There is a lot of bad blood between them, though. Not a lot on them, but they look really weird. Oh, okay. That's the Tojanita. Okay. Exactly, not a dog. Yeah, I really like those. A little watertight cabin on a big turtle. I like that. Yeah. Can you imagine, traveling in a magically created cyst inside a megalodon? It's like, dive! You're in a wereshark submersible. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, good advice. I'm planning to keep them 80% underwater and using the campaign setting book from How to Be a Good DM Guy, and had like 3 or 4 aquatic races. Part one, part two. Thank you. I'm still trying to think of a major plot hook for the campaigns. Any plot hooks, minor or major, to help break this writer's block? Thanks ahead of time. Okay, so imagine you've got a species which, kind of like the mind flayers, want to block out the sun so they can operate on the surface world without having to like squint all the time. Aquatic races are constantly trying to sink islands and things like that to basically create more real estate, because seamounts and stuff are incredibly valuable biological resources. And also, they don't like surface folk taking all their fish and dumping waste and stuff like that into their waterways. So Waters Deep, for instance, has been assaulted by a major like wereshark and a huge horde of monsters before. Quite a few of them still exist in the sewers, that left over from that invasion that happened hundreds of years ago. Islands like Lantern, for instance, may produce heaps of toxic wastes from magical experiments in alchemy that could be mutating creatures and causing undue amounts of aggression in the aquatic races there. So there's things that surface folk do which they may not even be aware is a problem. Large-scale construction efforts on the land produce lots of silt that washes away with rain and stuff and actually clogs up waterways and estuaries and cuts off food supplies and just basically makes life a living hell for the aquatic races that are living nearby. Fishing vessels and things like that use techniques which the aquatic races deem to be unacceptable. There's no restrictions on using super huge long nets and stuff like drift nets and things like that in Forgotten Realms. So that may be a major source of contention for aquatic races that have just seen one of their shark or dolphin or whale idols, like a sage that keeps visiting them like their Gandalf, get killed by a drift net from some stupid fishing village. So acts of extreme aggression may break out from the aquatic races onto the surface world quite frequently. They may do something even more extreme. So there's nothing stopping them from excavating underneath a coastal city and like creating lava tunnels and things like that literally cooks the water supply, or even tunnel in and salinate all of the wells in a town so that it's no longer got drinking water. So they could do things like that. Just a few ideas. Floating jellies of doom. Also, I love the idea of aquatic races that have developed some sort of armor or aqualung suit to operate up on the surface. So like a jellyfish which has got a bulbous sort of blister in the middle of it, and they just basically pop it over and it's cycling salt water so they can breathe it, which would look really hilarious. The Lorax of the sea, yeah. Yeah, tying adventures into the story could be that like just when their ship has been damaged and things like that, and they need to hold up at a port to get it repaired, that's when the port gets attacked. And so they're not only are the townsfolk who they're starting to get relationships with and get money from and things like that at threat, but also their ship is in danger because it's holed up at a port. Do I have any tips to pronounce Ixidzachtitl? Not really. There's multiple different ways of pronouncing it. Don't forget, they're not real. So, it's bigger on the inside. Yeah, Stormwrack is really good. Stuff on the environmental effects and things. A lot of those tips and things can be... Oh, it's the Roadworks truck. A lot of those tips from the Stormwrack can be included in your campaign. You don't need to convert anything from 3.5 to 5th edition in that case. It's just a resource that you can use. In that regard, the DM's Guild and a lot of old PDFs and things like that for 3.5 edition books are extremely useful and just as relevant now as the day they were printed. Married, yeah. I am the Lorax and I speak for the weed, the seaweed. A jellyfish city. Yeah, imagine basically jellyfish floating around and they've got like the equivalent of a human brain in there. Perhaps they were some sort of like there's a civilization of these brain jellyfish that were an experiment of mind flayers. And the mind flayer colony got wiped out from, I don't know, Neogi or something like that. But the jellyfish still remain. So you've got these aquatic flump style jellyfish, maybe? That would be cool. So you get a psychic call to defend them, maybe. It's like, you don't need some mind controllers to help you. We will help you anyway. It's just like, well, we're so alien looking, we didn't think you'd want to. It's like, no. You're cool. Shark lobster hybrid. Yeah, what's the other one? Ravnica. The Simic hybrids is another option. Do I have Ravnica? Oh, no, I don't think I have it. Where do the flumps come from? I don't know. They're just a distinct race that have been around. Remember, a lot of old species from old monster manuals don't have an origin story. They just are. Both went there at the same time, yeah. Review DC Atlantean Invasion of the Surface? Yeah, I suppose. The Atlanteans, I suppose, in Dungeons and Dragons would be sea elves mostly, but Tritons are kind of Atlanteans as well. But as for it, like sea elves, because of what was it, the War of the Leaf, or the Leaf Wars, or the Falling Leaves, or the Three Leaves, something like that. There was an era, William would know. It's an era of elven history where the sea elves actually, the surface elves actually went into the sea and established sea elf communities. At least on Faerun. It's different in different places. Hey, Adrenith. Oh, aquatic flump being the proto flump. Yeah, I suppose so. Could be. Flashpoint paradox. So yeah, I mean, if you've got aquatic underdark creatures, so creatures which are too sort of vulnerable to being predated on by roving giant moray eels and things like that, and they go into an underground environment. So underdark seas are a real thing. They're huge and they're extensive. Then they could have come onto the land and developed in the Underdark, who have never gone to the surface world. So you could have aquatic creatures which have developed and come up onto the land and established ecosystems in the Underdark ages ago, and have been protected ever since, because the Underdark is relatively stable in certain areas. So yeah. A ship mimic. Nice. Nice one, Patarius. The Giants campaign has taken a turn to a pirate game, and the party managed to roll 4 natural 20s and tamed a ship mimic. That is excellent. Street Sharks cartoon super soldiers for merfolk. Yeah. Yeah, you can imagine the merfolk experimenting with formulas of weresharkism to increase their combat abilities, and maybe it goes a little bit too far. Like a shark, they get a mild version, an alchemical version of wereshark blood that gives them increased armor class, but it heightens their aggression, and then they inject too much of it and they turn into full weresharks. How do I increase the power of the flump? Basically give them access to more spell-like abilities and increase the range of their magical network. So flumps from thousands of miles away could communicate with each other telepathically using their sort of circles as a ritual. Because when the flumps all come together and sort of have a gestalt sort of circle of minds, that's very much like they're performing some sort of a psychic ritual. And so any sort of psychic ritual that you could do is the equivalent of a magical ritual in D&D. So coming together, they can do all sorts of spells, like limited wish and things like that. So they can actually change reality around them. Like I said in my video on the flump are mysterious because I look at them as physical organs of a psychic creature. So they're actually bigger. They're like an iceberg of psychic entity with a tip above the surface intruding into the surface world, which is actually the flump body. That's what I think of them. Almost like a waste orifice, so to speak. Yeah, down with the landlubbers. Question: could a high-level wizard use true polymorph to theoretically become immortal? Yeah, like we've got plenty of traditions in Dungeons and Dragons and all sorts of other fantasy games where wizards live for a very long time. And the question is, how do they do that? Is it necromancy? Is it polymorphing? Is it cloning? All sorts of questions. So yeah, there should be multiple different means of extending your lifespan greatly if you're a wizard. The specifics of it is up to you. Lots and lots of, like in earlier editions of D&D, it was more common for players to come up with new spells and things like that. They would actually had mechanics for the research and how much it cost and how much time and effort it took to create new magical items and create new spells. Magical item creation cost experience points, so it was like, do you really need this magical item? Which sort of stopped mages and things and alchemists from equipping the entire party with powerful magical items, because it actually really detrimented their character in comparison to the rest of the adventuring party. So in regards to, boy, that was a tangent. Where did that come from? Creating new spells and new magical techniques was much more common, but it still goes on. Like, for instance, the clerics of Azuth, for instance, as part of their faith, they have to make a new variant of a spell or create a whole new spell every year. So once per year, they're expected to produce a new form of magic. So it's constantly. Monster Manual 3.5, page 200. Oh, yeah. Which Monster Manual was that, Moonring? Is it the first Monster Manual? Thanks, AJ, and all the awesome people in chat for the advice. Got to get back to work. Looking forward to aquatic knowledge from you. Yes. More to come, of course. What question about shadows? I missed it. Let me just zip back. Shadows. Oh, that was quite some time ago. What did you want to know about shadows? You want an AJ homebrew undead? Yeah. What? Thanks, Donald. Do you plan on doing any of the old Eladrin, such as Gaeli or Tulane? Yeah, I do. So I haven't done a video on elves yet. So it would be kind of a bit on the nose to talk about Eladrin before I talk about elves in general. Elves are very, very complicated. And elven history is very complicated, although it is very important, I think. And because it's so pervasive and had such an impact on the world of Toril, which is my main focus, I really want to learn all about elven culture before I sort of dip into it. But yeah, it's coming. eventually. I do plan on covering everything in D&D at some point one day. One day I'll look up from my book and say, I've read this before. I'm 97 years old and still people are watching YouTube. Except I'll be like a hologram sitting in your house. Sipping tea, Metamucil. Mind Flayer mermaids exist. Maybe? I don't know. Are there any known sigil-like undersea cities? I don't think so. When a person is killed by a shadow, are they easier to brainwash? That sounds probably about right. I mean, it's going to be a very traumatic experience, right? So you want to brainwash somebody when they're confused and dazed. So that would be an ideal time to do it, wouldn't it? It kind of makes sense to me. That sort of rings true. Does it ring true for you? Thanks, Kikas. You're literally running Saltmarsh tonight. Excellent. Sahuagin murder time. Kikas, whoa, thank you. Will you, pretty please, create us magical items periodically? Everything from common to artifact level. Make it a series. Well, I do have a magic item series, so yeah. Yeah, okay. There's actually something from older editions which I really want to talk about in regards to whether they would be relevant in 5th edition, which is like the legacy magic items and magic items that get more powerful as you grow in experience. Aqua Drow, Aqua Behir, Aqua Griffin, and Aqua Orcs. Yep. There's an Aqua Troll, for sure. If you want an interesting wereshark and troll situation, the island of Neth, the forest, the stand of Neth in the Border Kingdoms. Look for that. I think that will probably be updated in the book by Ed Greenwood that's coming out recently, or is out now. So the Border Kingdoms, hopefully they got some update on the stand of Neth and the situation with the weresharks and the trolls there. If it gets mentioned at all, I don't know. But that's relevant. The wall, thank you. Killer underwater attack spell. Altered lightning separates hydrogen atom on target. Ignites fuel air underwater pressure generating shockwave. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that would basically be the same as like it would be like a fireball, but it's a shockwave, a bludgeoning force instead of a flame force. Ooh, getting emailed by people. Oh. NaNoWriMo trying to get me involved in writing again. Had some interesting stats for my... I use Grammarly and it tracks my writing statistics. And I hit like 10,000 words one week. It was crazy. It's like, you're more productive than 96% of people. I'm like, really? I suppose so. A hologram AJ, yeah. I mean, if I'm going to appear as a hologram, I might as well go full wizard. Could you freeze someone underwater and they float up to the surface like an ice cube? Yeah, I suppose they would. Depends though. I mean, if they're carrying around like, plate mail and stuff, they're going to get weighed down. But yeah, generally I think they'd be more buoyant. Physics is physics. I don't know anything about the Icewind Dale adventure. I don't know whether that's tied into the stuff that was being written for the video game. It's all news to me. I suppose so. Like more so than most, I know the Icewind Dale region in great detail because I had to research it. So I know its history. I know all about the 10 towns. I've read all the books. So Icewind Dale is probably the bit of Forgotten Realms that I know the most about. Second would be like Cormier. Yeah. So I suppose I could run an adventure in Icewind Dale without really having to have a source book to do it. I'm interested to see what the cover art and stuff is about. Whether that's a priestess of Auril. Auril, of course, had there's an ice temple, and there's a faction which is kind of trying to take over all the cold lands, so like Damar and Vasa and all those places. And they've been creating road networks, which is a strange thing, but there you go. World Builder's Anvil? What? Aqua Hobgoblins. Yeah, I mean, there's aquatic versions of most things. Oh yeah, orange dragons would be devastating underwater. Sheesh. Does the ice magically stay frozen, or do they get frozen and immediately start thawing? I would say they'd start thawing straight away. Creepshow 2, the goo in the water that eats your flesh off. Ew. The far realm region that borders Mount Celestia. Okay. Hologram death cheese, yeah. Magical smell like evil smell particles which are flying around your room in holographic form. Any Lovecraftian horrors in the deep? Yeah, plenty. Deep ones. Cthulhu. Dagon. How do I feel about the Runeterra League of Legends guidebook? It's news to me, Jonathan. When capturing the personality and power of a black dragon, what are the best things to emphasize to your players? The fact that black dragons like killing things, and they'll invent excuses to kill their own minions. So they're the typical crazy, tyrannical bad guy, like drugged out. Like when you have like a coked up like gang boss who is killing their own friends, sort of thing. That's the black dragon personality, just perfectly. They're addicted to sadism, and they're extremely lethal to everything around them, including their minions. So when you have kobolds and stuff that are working for a black dragon, they become victims of that mentality as well. So they're becoming hyper aggressive. They're not even like a red dragon will beat things up and dominate and bully them, and if you kowtow and go to a red dragon, it'll let you alone. It'll be like, oh, you pathetic worm, you know. Black dragons, on the other hand, will kill even somebody who's surrendering and begging for their life. They like it, so they're cruel and vicious and sadistic. So they will do things. They will manipulate people to get more people to kill. So it's not just about greed for them. It's part of their hoard is corpses and kills. So they're addicted to killing. Sorry, Josh. What did I miss? Earlier edition would cause you to float up. Okay. If you want killer aquatic encounter, look up AJ's Orange Dragon video. What comment are you talking about, Josh? Thanks, Zytech. AJ would be the greatest sage in Forgotten Realms. No, probably not. I think Elminster probably knows more than I do. Oh, I see. I've got the wrong emphasis on your sentence. Yes, AJ Pickett read my comment. Yeah. Sorry. I thought you were like, read my comment. Wastroliths are horrifying. Dagon aboliths are horrifying. Yeah. Frost folk in the Forgotten Realms? I'm not entirely sure. I mean, you got Genasi in the Forgotten Realms. It's a 5e setting of the League of Legends game world that D&D Beyond have produced. Have they? I did not know that. Underground roads from the local dwarves. Yeah, the local dwarf population in 10 Towns is not huge. That would take them a long time to actually do. It would probably be more quickly accomplished by hiring the mages from Luskin, but they are extortionists. There is the what's it called? Fire thingy. Oh, I don't remember the name of it. There's a mining town there that's very secretive. But I mean, that could actually be going on as well. Of course, there's stuff under the ground around 10 Towns, which, like, for instance, Kelvin's Khan, which you don't really want to mess with. And of course, you have remoras and yetis and things like that. Yetis are known for burrowing to conceal themselves from the sort of flat landscape, and they just pop out of nowhere. But remoras are a worry. And of course you've got permafrost, which is difficult to deal with. Can spirit undead exist underwater? Yeah, absolutely. It's a necronomicon. Necronom nom 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 bound in beef jerky. Should be. Yeah, I got it, Josh. Sorry. Who would win in a gang war, Blue Dragon or properly role-played Beholder? Hard to say. Let's say a Beholder that's got a Zentarum faction under its control. Oh, I did. Mystara. Oh, okay. Mr. Welch got his Mystara PM finished. Good. What were angels doing during the time of troubles? Angels have got a much larger multiverse to worry about than just one world. So they probably would have been watching with interest, keeping tabs on things, but otherwise not getting involved in the activities of an overgod disciplining a pantheon. I mean, it's small potatoes. Yeah, Green Dragons as behind the scenes boss is great. Green Dragons are like my go-to for it. You didn't think the chromatic dragons could polymorph, but yeah, it's the Green Dragon all the time. They can use magic to polymorph. Can a personal wizard bind their soul to a plane other than the material plane? Well, wizards would be probably more inclined to make a demi-plane. But don't forget, certain other planes are unbounded, so they're infinite. So, for instance, Biotopia has got thousands of miles which have got no people living on it whatsoever. So a wizard could basically go to a far distant area in Biotopia, well away from gnomish settlements and pantheons and stuff, and put their castle or whatever there, and have a perfectly lovely environment which has got nothing around it but unspoilt wilderness. You know, because Biotopia is infinite land. Infinite land. So yeah, I'm like, read through Biotopia, it's like infinite land, and it's just like the idea of traveling for light years in a certain in any direction, and it just being rolling landscapes and lakes and streams and apple trees and you name it. It's just infinite land. That means that you could tap into Biotopia and transport through a massive portal big chunks of land, just churning it out like an ice cream scoop and create worlds of compressed Bitopia matter, and it just wouldn't even make a dent. Wouldn't make a dent in Bitopia. So yeah, you can literally create worlds through portals from Bitopia. It's like, forget about the plane of Earth, the elemental plane of Earth. Yeah, Bitopia is free real estate. Free real estate. Well, it's time for me to go, everybody. I've actually been here for like an hour and a half. Close to. Or is it an hour? An hour and 10 minutes. That's good enough. Thank you very much. It's been very enjoyable. We've actually stayed on topic, mostly. Know the deep. That empire that was big since it's cut off. Oh, you mean Imaska? So Imaska had a limited population of Imaskari that were there in the first place, because it was certain families that rule over Imaska. But it's been a long time, so their civilization has developed somewhat, and they've become very decadent, and essentially it's demiplanes inside demiplanes inside demiplanes inside demiplanes. So it's like the TARDIS from Doctor Who. So essentially it's much bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. It's connected through these sealed doorways that you forget where they are the moment you leave them. So yeah. Peace out, everybody. I'm going to go and do missions now. So look forward to the weresharks video coming out very soon. And after that, it'll be mongrel folk and maybe even a bonus video this week. I don't know. We'll see. And I will catch you on the next live stream, which should be on the weekend, back on our regular time and place. So pretty soon. Bye.